Clerks,
Clerks.
1994.
Oof.
Were you around in
I
1994?
would have been. I was born at the end of 91,
So
so
you saw it at the cinema as a
yes.
young 3-year-old uh,
Yeah, yeah.
lad running around Stratford upon Avon.
Yes, that was something I wanted to ask though with all of these for the in-depth this season, because I feel like last season with Batman we were kind of focusing on like the representations, like visual representations and how it looked from the comics or story or whatever. And I feel like with the View Askew films, I think because the majority of them, I feel like anyway, are quite um like personable films, like they're quite relatable in aspects. I feel
Hmm.
like it could be interesting if you remember when you first saw the films that we watched. So in this case, when you first saw Clerks, would you remember that?
I do remember when I first saw Clerks. I remember it being when they released the 10th anniversary
Hmm.
DVD. So
The
that
one with
probably
the
would,
X on it.
yeah, it's got the X on it. It had all the deleted scenes, like the
Yeah.
alternate ending, which people frowned upon.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess that was probably 2004, probably,
Yeah.
which is in the height of my older brother is a big film fanatic, and him and I were like almost like best friends as like brothers. Like you and your brother are extremely close, or your
Mhm.
brothers and both my brothers as well. But him and I used to watch a lot of films together, and he had a massive DVD collection, and I had a small one. Yeah, he's the one who got this special edition. Is like, have you ever seen Clerks? I was like, no, and I was really into films, so I was like, I'll check it out. And I remember him saying like it's like super low budget. It's Kevin Smith directing. Obviously, by this point, I think I'd seen. I mean, I must have seen Jay and Silent Bob was probably out by then.
Yeah, that was
Maybe.
01.
Yeah. So I think that was I think that was my first Jay and Silent Bob film.
Hmm.
Um, no, actually, that's a lie. Dogma was my first Jay and Silent Bob film.
Okay, cool.
Jay and Silent Bob, and then I saw Clerks and
Nice.
Clerks 2, which is just my favorite one of all of them. I cannot wait to talk about Pillow Pants. Um, so yeah, so that's when I saw it with my brother. Watched the DVD. He's quite big on watching all the commentaries and the extras, so we would watch all that stuff again. So you watch it and then you watch it again with the commentary, and
Mhm.
I think doing that sort of process with things like Clerks is probably what sent me to university to do film as well. Like I enjoyed it so much. So yeah, I remember watching that. I remember really enjoying it. Like you kind of touched upon as well, um because it feels so real. Like
Mm.
what I mean, there are some bits in that film that probably wouldn't realistically happen
Yeah.
on a day. There's a lot that happens in that day, but it just feels sort of don't know, like mates. Like
Yeah.
you could have been in there. You could have been in that film in some aspect, whether you're a shopper or whatever. So yeah,
Yeah.
when did you see it?
Yeah, I was trying to remember, and I think I'm the same as you, where I came at it later. I think I can't remember what my first View Askew film was. It was either I think it either would have been Dogma or Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, the same as you. I feel like I saw them both around the same time, probably. And then Clerks, I think I came to after I'd seen Mallrats.
Yeah.
So I really did kind of like jump around. And I don't know if I've ever watched them chronologically. So I think
No, I
for
don't know. This will be the first time I've watched them
yeah,
chronologically.
which I think is quite an interesting thing to kind of go through and see how it all pans out. But yes, and I definitely came as Clerks late, but I remember just loving it. Because I think as well, like going from Dogma and Jay and Silent Bob, which are kind of very heightened and surreal and kind of like uh, over the top, to then almost work your way backwards, and you've got like Mallrats, which is like obviously grounded, and then you've got Clerks, which is very grounded. Um, it was quite interesting to work your way back, but you still feel like there's the same um, kind of like emotional current running through it. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's quite impressive. I think that was possibly one of the reasons that I don't know if we were talking about doing this in depth was that um, definitely from my half anyway, I think the View Askew films feel like you can kind of tell like any story, whether it's nonsensical or whether it's very real. And yet both of those somehow find a way to still engage you emotionally. Which I think is quite an interesting and impressive creative feat.
Yeah, I think that I agree as well. I think what stands out with Clerks as well that you can obviously tell is how much Kevin Smith had riding on this film, like how much money he
Mm.
sunk into it himself. And I read somewhere that he sold his comics.
Yeah, yeah,
Bless him,
yeah,
which he got back now. But you can see how much it means to him. I think during this film, like it's all there, isn't it? Like it's all on the. He didn't leave anything off the. Well, I mean,
no,
he had to cut some stuff because he was told to, but it's all there, isn't it? Like
yeah,
it's him and his friends and his family, and it's personal, and it's I don't know. There are bits of it when I watched it back a few weeks ago. Cause I can't remember the last time I watched it before I watched it. Because we were supposed to record this quite a while ago, so I think I watched it maybe 4 months ago now. I just remember thinking that you can see how it's not amateurish. It,
mm.
it, it looks like it, but there are bits that you think like it's it doesn't look like I don't know how to describe it without being offensive. Like now I just keep saying like it's it does look like it's amateurish in a way because it is. It's
Yeah,
like it's a bunch of there's people that aren't even actors and actresses in it, right?
yeah,
Um, but it seems like they've just it's just raw. Like
yeah,
I guess that's the best word for it, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I like about it. You know, it's like
yeah,
it feels like a handy cam type thing, and it's just almost like they've just put a camera there and they're just going to go for it. Whatever happens, happens. There's a very big difference between Clerks and Clerks Two, right? Because Clerks
yeah,
Two is more over the top.
yeah,
It's beautiful. Like it goes from the black and white to the color, right? If I remember
mm.
right, and it's sort
Yeah,
of like you know, almost a bit like Hollywood, like
yeah,
big budget in a way and things like that. Whereas this is just small and
yeah,
nice and
yeah,
stupid. So
yeah. And that was kind of one of the things that I don't know if I'd forgotten about it, but when I rewatched it, was the um just that like relatability of it through the dialogue.
yeah,
Um and I think that's like I wonder if that's partly where you get that kind of paradigm shift between how it's shot and, as you're saying, it kind of does look amateurish at times, and it's like you can tell this is somebody's first film, but the script and the dialogue feels very refined. It feels very like
yeah, it's
finesse.
sharp,
There's
isn't it? It's really
yeah,
sharp. It's
um,
it's it's really really well done. I mean, it's
yeah, and-
I think you can see if you were someone who hadn't seen it before and you were new to that film, then you would you'd spend most of your years watching like huge blockbusters and things like that. You'd probably be quite put off by it.
yeah,
Uh, there's a lot of films that my wife wants me to watch. She likes a lot of old films. I like Casablanca, blah blah blah. Casablancas. Don't know why I
nice.
kept throwing an L in there. Casablanca and things like that. And I don't mind those films, but
Mm,
they don't do it for me really. Um, and I'm not saying this is old like that. I'm just saying like it's different. It's a different kind of film, and I imagine some younger people would feel like no, this is my cup of tea. But if you really looked at it and you got it for like the script and what it is from Kevin Smith, then you would love it. I think
yeah,
you
yeah,
just got to get past like that. It's a guy's first film on a very low budget.
yeah.
Um, and I
That's
think
it.
you'd be surprised as well at how much money it actually made. Like
Yeah,
with the parameters that were set for it and things, like it did really well.
yeah, yeah. And there is just something about it which I think if you're into pop culture, which I assume you are if you're listening to this podcast. But I feel like if you're into pop culture, then there is at least part of this film that speaks to you because of the conversations that they have. Like I feel like they're all kind of conversations that you'd almost have with other pop culture people in some way. Um,
Yeah, I mean I work in a comic shop, right? And
yeah,
we have 12 members of staff. that work with me, and some of our conversations are just as ridiculous as the ones that are
Yeah.
in this.
Yeah.
Uh, we often say if you could put a camera on the wall, because we're in a generation where like we have to put social media stuff up, right?
Yeah.
It's like a little bit of it's planned, a little bit of it's forced, a little bit of it is, you have to do something every day. But I guarantee you, the most things we would get attention wise is if you put a camera on our office wall and you just listen to half the stuff we were saying, because it's borderline ridiculous. Like, it's very dark comedy,
Yeah.
uh, and that's what this is. Like, it's those conversation, pop culture, um, stuff people would be. If you're into pop culture, then it's just right up your alley, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Kevin Smith is a big geek.
Yeah. Because I think it's in this. I think it's in Clerks anyway. Because it's been about a month since I watched it, but I always get it confused whether it's in another film. But I think it's in this where they discuss Return of the Jedi and the people working on the Death Star.
Yeah, it's
And
Clerks, isn't it?
yeah. I can remember it was Clerks 2, but I think it was Clerks. And they
It's Randall and who else was it? Oh, it's not going to go well if I can't remember the character's name. I really have to improve as we go on through the watch my growth, everyone, as I
yeah.
remember several characters' names.
But yeah, I think it is between Dante and Randall, isn't it? They have the
Yeah, it is
conversation
Dante,
like,
rather, yeah.
which if anybody hasn't seen Clerks, go and watch it before you listen to this podcast because it's well worth your time. But the conversation that they have has always stuck with me, where it's like, were the people building the Death Star just contractors, and were they innocent people? And I was like, that is like the kind of conversation I would have with someone like in a
Yeah,
pub or something.
yeah, definitely.
And I love that. I always think that's the thing about Kevin Smith's writing, is that he somehow manages to tap into these conversations that at some point you've either had as a pop culture fan or like things that you've wondered, and you sort of then just see them on the screen and you're like, this is
What
amazing.
you talk about,
Yeah.
yeah. It's what you, Nick, you are Nick, you, Harry, and I would talk about, like, those sort of silly things as well, especially when you're out if you're drinking and stuff. It's just
Yeah.
spot on. I think that's why it's a perfect film for that kind of an audience, and why I don't want to be wrong with earlier when I said like it's an old film that maybe the younger people of today wouldn't appreciate. But if you're into this sort of stuff and you're into films, then you would enjoy it, and you should check it out. It should be on your list. I mean, it's a cult classic, isn't it? That's the thing.
Yeah.
It really is a cult. I mean, all like you're saying with Mallrats, which we'll talk about next time, that wasn't financially successful. It wasn't really well received, but it's up there. I remember at uni, people were like, "Let's watch Mallrats." I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, I love Mallrats. I love Ben
Yeah.
Affleck, and Jason Lee, and all that jazz." So yeah, let's go for it. So yeah, I mean, I think Clerks is up there. Like, is one of those films that I'll always be really, really fond of for like hitting. Because when I was that age as well, when I was younger, like 2004 and stuff. I think I've openly said on this podcast before that I didn't really have many people that I talked to about pop culture stuff. It wasn't part of my social circles at school.
Mhm.
More like football, music, and things, and reading comics and stuff was kind of like, I don't know, not what it would be like today. Like,
Yeah.
all these adults are coming out the woodwork still,
Mhm.
years and years, and loving comics and everything. So it's and and yeah, I've lost my train of thought. So I was just thinking about like painful, no one liking comics memories at school. But yeah, it's I don't know where I was going to go, but there was a reason there for something.
Yeah, I think that like watching it back as well, you I think I put it in my notes as well, that watching a Kevin Smith film is sort of like um in some way kind of like hanging out with your friends.
Yeah,
There's like,
that's the best way to describe it, isn't it? Like,
yeah, and I think the more those characters pop up, like as we do this in depth, it's kind of like you're just seeing old friends here and there, and then you meet some new ones, and they sort of get brought into the fold. And there's a real nice like warmth to everything that I think he kind of does. Um, but yeah, Clerks being the kind of starting point, I think the thing that shocked me, well, it didn't shock me, but that I'd maybe forgotten about was, as we were saying, the writing, but in particular, like one scene which I'd completely forgotten about, the bit where the guy is like pulls out the lung and then like tries to convince people to like stop smoking, and it's all just for like
rolls his sleeves up like
yeah,
business.
and it's all just to like sell chewing gum, which I was like, that's amazing. That feels like something that was just like very carefully crafted or actually did happen.
Yeah, because I mean, he worked in it, didn't he? Kevin
Yeah,
Smith worked in the shop that he shot it in, but that's the nice thing about this film as well, because it's like chunks, isn't it? Like there are different scenarios. Like there's the lung bit and everything, and all that stuff. Like it's nice because it's very quotable. Don't make me quote it because I will probably mess it up. But that's the thing; it all sticks in your head, doesn't it? Like those lines. I mean, Clerks is quotable, but I mean, Clerks 2 is just out of this world quotable. There's so much of that, and that's just dialed up even more, isn't it? To what it is. And I think you probably hit the nail on the head there. That like a Kevin Smith film is like, know, hanging out with your friends basically. And that's why it's nice that this is, like you said, if you were watching it chronologically, which we're obviously in the process of doing now, and which I've never done, but you're almost seeing your mates again and again, aren't you? Because because Kevin Smith smartly and wonderfully uses so many of the same actors in all of his films. So I did see Jay and Silent Bob first. That was the first one I remember, or Dogma rather. I remember watching Jay and Silent Bob and be like, oh, those are the guys from Dogma. It's like, wait, what's going on? There's also and Ben Affleck's in it again. All of a sudden, answering the door, and like, what is happening here? And it was, it's obviously quite a lot of people use the same cast members now, don't they, in their films because they grow attached to them. Like Del Toro using Ron Perlman in several things, and well, that was my first example, but probably because I'm looking at a Hellboy figure across the room. But they do. They use like people they can trust and things. Like James Gunn uses several people, doesn't he? Same people, and so I think I don't want to say Kevin Smith was like the pioneer of like doing that, but it definitely has to be up there with someone who's reused the same people over and over again. They're all wonderful as well. They're also, some of them are so different from the roles. You look at like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and stuff like that, and like they go Good Will Hunting and then Dogma, and
it's crazy.
It's great, and I love Clerks. I really do love Clerks. I wish I had watched it just before we recorded this again, just so I could be more quotable for it. But I just think for everything that went into it, like if you read about it, not just the Wikipedia, but if you really go into it and you listen to some like interviews and stuff, like he was only allowed to shoot it at night time, so he had to work his shift, shoot his film. That's why the shutters are down. That's why they did that bit with the chewing gum, because they had to work around it, and the things he probably had to just, it's not like life changing things he had to do. I mean, you borrowing people's money and stuff is probably life changing, but I don't remember if it was like 20 something days, 30. I can't remember what it was, what I read. But they had a window to shoot it all, and like by the end of it, he was like just exhausted. But I guess he was probably really proud. Like you imagine.
That's the kind of thing like that's the thing that I think carries across in the two in depths for us, is that I feel like with Batman, I kept saying how you could almost tell when there was like a labor of love. Like the Batman feels like everybody's on the same page and everybody's crafting the same film, and because of that, everybody loves it.
Apart from Jim Gordon.
Yeah,
we don't love Jim.
I love Jim Gordon. But but it feels like everything's there for it, and I think that's the one of the things about Clerks, especially. Like his other films have it, but there is something about Clerks that has this charm that it really feels like it's a whole bunch of friends who love film, love cinema, and wanted to take a stab at making a film just about them, like about their lives, and wanted to see themselves on a screen. And I think that comes across every time you watch it. It's kind of hard not to be excited uh by what they're doing, because you kind of just feel this like camaraderie uh, in their making of it. You're kind of like, it's exciting, and it comes across that way. Um, yeah, I just really love the feel of it. I always have.
What do you think about like Dante and Randall's relationship? Because that's a standout, isn't it? Like the way they talk to each other and the way Randall talks to Dante, and
Yeah, they've got a very like specific relationship.
they're supposed to be there. And Randall, classic Randall's like, all this shit that you're saying is going wrong, but you are like the master of your own downfall, basically. Like
Yeah,
you agreed to play hockey on the roof, and you agreed to do this and
yeah,
this, that, and the other. And like obviously hard on Randall because Randall's like almost slacking, but then Dante's just no better really.
yeah.
That carries on into Clerks 2 and 3 as well. Like it's I think that's they're great. I think the fact that Kevin Smith and Jason
Muse.
Muse their role as Jane and Silent Bob is great as well,
Yeah,
and it doesn't take anything away from any of the other
no.
actors. In fact, their bits are relatively low key compared to
Mm.
when I think Kevin Smith originally had the role for. I think he was originally going to be Randall.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's said before that he gave Randall the best lines because that was,
Yeah, because he was going to play him. But
yeah,
then, not good that he obviously with time constraints stuff, but stepping away and then just giving himself, ironically, no lines,
yeah, yeah,
which is pretty cool as well.
yeah.
Uh,
Although he does have a lot. I think he's got one line in this, hasn't he?
did he?
Like, I think he's got one sentence in it, where he's at the cashier and he says something to Dante.
He does. He does say
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah. So
It's
he's
just
got
like
like, yeah, which sort of
because then
starts the trend.
Jay shut him down,
Yeah, something like that.
which is always fantastic. When it's
Yeah,
like when he calls like pop like a fat fuck and stuff. It's always funny.
yeah.
Uh,
They nail it. It's so good, and like especially because like coming off of Clerks 3, which I'd seen in September, having watched Clerks just before it, and obviously the basis of Clerks 3 is basically that they make Clerks. It's nice to see the parallels, and it's nice to see those films connecting and there being this kind of emotional current running through it. And it feels like a payoff. Like when you get to Clerks 3, it feels like there's a real sense of achievement and a real sense of like journey for everyone. Which is nice. It's just, yeah, it's just great. Like it is just great.
it is.
Yeah.
I was a little bit. I remember when I first saw it, I was a bit put off, and this isn't a knock on the actor, but the person who plays Dante, um,
Yes. I have blanked on every name possible.
yeah, but he wound me up quite a lot. I remember when I first saw it, and the first couple of times, I don't know whether it's kind of like the kind of guy that you just is quite frustrating, but then you kind of warm to him so much, like
Yeah.
especially when you get to like later on in the films and everything like that. But he's I guess that's the way. I don't know whether it's the way he's supposed to portray, but it's my interpretation of him that he is very frustrating. I mean, I guess because he keeps saying he wasn't even supposed to be there, and Randall's right, isn't he? Like, you're not supposed to be there, but you're here, mate, and you're doing everything yourself. So it's
Yeah.
especially with, like his love triangle, I guess,
Yeah.
situation. Veronica and the other lady from Nick. Like, I think I said this last podcast, but the next podcast, I'm writing everything down on a big sheet of paper or
Everyone's
having
name will be there.
a whiteboard in front of me, so I remember everyone's names.
Yeah.
I'd say it's just because it's a film I don't watch so often, but it happens with everything that I love as well. Just before we were recording, we were talking about comics, and I was like, it's that comic writer, Billy Bob.
Yeah.
Whichever areas did you want to talk about? Like, while we still got time left on the podcast, let's dive in.
Trying to think what else there was that I made a note about. What else did I talk about? Most of my notes, to be honest, are all just focused on like dialogue and characters and the way that they're just like I've said it before, but they're just relatable, and part of that is just this crafting of like Kevin Smith wanting to see him and his friends on screen, and I think that's the thing that it probably achieves the most.
Do you think he knew how his career was going to go once he had finished filming it? Like, because I get the sense of after I've seen that film, like we said, that it's the script was strong and it looked good and it had a lot going for it. Do you think he really knew that he had? Because I haven't seen an interview where he talks about this part of it, especially. But do you think he knew he'd like hit a bit of a home run? Do you think he knew this was going to launch his career? Because that's what it did. It launched his career because it got him,
Yeah, everywhere.
Got the green light to do more rats, and then
Yeah,
you think about where Kevin Smith is now, like
yeah.
his hands in a lot of different areas, and he's doing the Masters of the Universe stuff, and he's comic geek. He's got his own podcast. He's got loads going on. Like,
Yeah,
do
I don't
you really
think so, because it always feels like a film where it's just like I want to see um like I want to see myself on screen. That's kind of like ultimately like what everybody's kind of searching for with film to an extent. That's the relatability, and I think that's how you know whether you've connected to a film is if you've found something there, you kind of go like, this is me. Um, and I feel a connection to this film because of that. And Clerks feels more like somebody who's found the right pocket in time to carve their way into the industry by being like, me and my friends kind of haven't been represented on film, and like, here's this. Um, and it just so happened that the audience for that were there. Like there were enough people like Kevin Smith or like his friends that were kind of searching for it. So I always kind of got the impression that he didn't know what was going to happen with it.
I wonder
Um,
if it was just like if he got this done, he was happy. Like I've done this. I assume he had like higher aspirations and like done and done. But if it got made and it got put in a cinema and it made a bit of money, like that's a good feeling as well, isn't it? Like you
yeah,
and I comic and stuff together. Like you have like one hit that does well, you'd be very happy, wouldn't you? Like just
mm,
have something out there that is has seen the light of day. Um, But thank God it did. Thank God it did
yeah,
work out. I mean, he did keep making them because there are some gems that we will obviously
yes,
cover as well.
yeah. It really does feel like it. It just, in a weird way, it feels like the start of somebody.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think it was. It doesn't feel like it was crafted with the intention of like I'm going to make another one after this. It sort of just feels like I'm throwing everything I've got into this to make sure that I've represented like us on film, and that was my goal with it.
I mean, he certainly was going to. I mean, there was obviously a plan that it might not work any. Well, I guess do any more Clerks because of the alternate ending that got cut where Dante gets killed.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
which is weird. I mean, I get why they didn't put it in. It's nice that they didn't put it in there because we got other things from it. But
yeah.
yeah, no, so much of it was Kevin Smith's. Like, why wouldn't you just let him have it? I know it's about rating, like age ratings and stuff, isn't it? That's
Mhm.
why, because they wanted it to be a certain thing in the cinema. But it's shame we didn't get to do the ending they originally wanted as well. But again, worked out for the best.
Yeah, it did.